The sun beat down on a row of tired cars outside King's Premium Motors, a black-owned garage clinging to the edge of foreclosure. Inside, three mechanics hovered over a silent Lexus, sweat rolling down their temples. "Man, this thing is done," Reggie muttered, tossing a rag. "Don't say that," Clara shot back, wiping her hands. "If we lose this job, Bruno's toast." Behind them, Bruno King, owner and last hope of the shop, scanned a stack of overdue bills. His jaw tightened as he glanced toward the window. Across the street, a real estate banner for Vance Auto Group flapped in the wind, Silas Vance's empire creeping closer every day. The shop door creaked. A tall black man in a faded janitor uniform stepped in, sun-bleached cap pulled low. His boots were scuffed, shirt frayed at the cuffs, but his posture was steady. "Can I fix it for food?" he asked, voice low but clear. Reggie snorted. "What is this, Fast and Furious lunch break?" Clara laughed nervously. "Sir, this is Alexis. You don't just—" "I'm serious," the man said. "One meal. If I can't get it running, you don't owe me a thing." Bruno looked up, suspicion fighting curiosity. The Lexus belonged to a repeat customer, already threatening to pull business if they didn't deliver. The shop's reputation, and maybe its last month of rent, sat dead under that hood. "Who are you?" Bruno asked. "Howard Carter," he replied simply. "People call me Howie." Bruno studied him. Wiry frame, rough hands, eyes like worn steel. Something about the way the man scanned the garage, quick, precise, made Bruno pause. "Fine," he said, wary. "But touch the wrong wire and you're out." Howie nodded once. He stepped forward, ignoring Reggie's dramatic eye roll. The Lexus idled lifelessly. Howie leaned in, ear close to the engine, fingers grazing hoses and sensors with the caution of someone listening for a heartbeat. He tapped the housing, tightened a connector, traced a lead with surgical calm. "Yo, he's really going for it," Robbie whispered from the doorway, phone already filming. "This gonna be good." A minute passed. Howie straightened, eyes narrowing at a spot no one else noticed. He grabbed a small wrench from the bench without asking, loosened a clamp, and nudged a cable free. "Try it now," he said. Reggie shrugged, slid behind the wheel, and turned the key. The Lexus coughed, hesitated, then roared awake, engine purring like it had never failed. The shop froze. Clara's jaw dropped. Reggie looked back, stunned. Bruno blinked twice, relief mixing with disbelief. Robbie whooped, "Yo, this is going viral!" He swung the phone toward Howie. "Say something for the camera, man." But Howard wasn't looking at the phone. His gaze drifted far beyond the shop, to some invisible point only he could see. The blur of a steering wheel in his hands, a crowd cheering, a girl's laughter riding the wind. For an instant, a whisper seemed to brush the heat-heavy air. "You can fix anything, Daddy." Howie blinked hard, the vision fading. He pulled his cap lower, masking the tremor in his breath. "About that meal," he said quietly. "A sandwich will do." Outside, a breeze rattled Vance's banner across the street, as if warning that someone Silas thought buried had just stepped back into the game. Clara couldn't shake the feeling. The way Howard's hands had hovered over that engine, sure, steady, listening more than looking, it wasn't how janitors fixed things. It was how champions claimed trophies. She leaned against the counter, still staring as he wiped grease from his palms with a shop towel that wasn't his. "Bruno," she murmured, low enough for only him to hear. "You see that? The way he touched that manifold? My uncle used to talk about a driver back in the day. Golden hands." Bruno frowned. "Golden who?" "Golden hands," she repeated. "Black guy from down south. Won rallies in the 90s, built his own engines. Folks said he could hear a motor breathe." She narrowed her eyes at Howard, who now stood by the open bay door, shoulders relaxed but face unreadable. "That's exactly how he moved." Bruno gave a dry laugh, trying to push away the chill running up his spine. "Clara, legends don't walk in off the street asking for a sandwich." "Maybe not," she said, "but look at him. That man's been somewhere." Behind them, Robbie replayed the video on his phone, grinning. "Yo, this got flavor. Gonna post it right now. Janitor drops Lexus Masterclass. Watch the internet eat this up. Howard glanced at the screen and caught a freeze frame of himself bent over the engine, cap shadowing his face, hands precise, almost elegant. Something flickered in his eyes, fast and raw, before he turned away. A faint voiceover slid through the moment, the narrator's tone clipped and urgent, like a breath over a drumbeat. Before the streets claimed him, Howard Carter ruled another kind of track. Cameras loved him, sponsors chased him, then a headline changed everything. Golden Hands crashes, blood alcohol twice the limit. The story stuck. The man vanished. Howard stepped outside for air. Across the avenue, the gleaming facade of Vance Auto Group reflected the sunlight like a blade. Inside an upstairs office, Silas Vance was hunched over security footage delivered by one of his managers, a shaky clip from the garage's CCTV. Silas watched as the janitor leaned over the Lexus, twisting a single wire and reviving an engine 3 certified techs couldn't touch. His chair creaked as he leaned closer, pausing the video at Howard's face. "No," Silas whispered. A tremor of disbelief slid under his words. "It can't be." He zoomed in. The grainy image sharpened just enough. Same jawline, same calm eyes that once stared him down across a racetrack podium 15 years ago. A ghost wearing coveralls. Silas sank back, fingers drumming the armrest. He remembered smoke, shattered glass, a planted bottle in the wreckage. He remembered a signature stolen from a contract, the patents that built his empire. And he remembered how certain he'd been that night, that Howard Carter, Golden Hands, would never rise again. But here he was, alive, wrench in hand, fixing luxury cars for food. On the street below, a group of older black men strolled past the garage, voices rising in animated debate. One gestured toward the bay door. "That brother got touch," he said, half joking. "Reminds me of old school cats, back when talent had to fight twice as hard to get noticed." Howard heard them, a faint smile tugging before fading. His fingers brushed the brim of his cap, an old reflex from days when crowds cheered and a little girl waved from the pit wall, chanting, "Go, Daddy!" He exhaled slow, as if sealing the memory back inside, unaware that Silas Vance was already plotting his next move. Bruno slammed a folder onto the counter. Bills slid across the grease-stained wood. "Numbers don't lie," he said. His voice was flat, like a verdict. Clara glanced at the stack. "Rent?" Bruno nodded once. "Vance wants this block. Offers half its worth." Reggie leaned on a jack. Same thing he did on Lennox. Black shop. Gone in a month. Howard kept mopping near the bay door, silent, listening. Bruno rubbed a hand over his head. "Dad cut the ribbon here. Said we finally owned something that couldn't be taken." His eyes stayed on the floor. Guess he didn't know Silas Vance. Outside, an SUV slid past. Black paint, windows dark as coal. It slowed just long enough for everyone to feel it, then rolled on. Clara's jaw set. "He's hunting." Reggie spit into a rag. "Man thinks our side of town's a chessboard." Bruno exhaled through his nose, sharp. "Let him look." Howard wrung the mop, water dark with grit. He scanned the room. Faded photos of Bruno's father, a hand-painted sign, black-owned since 1995, curling at the edges. The smell of oil, sweat, and quiet fear. He caught Clara's stare, a flicker of curiosity behind her guard. Howard lowered his gaze, but his shoulders squared. From somewhere behind memory came a child's voice, bright as sunlight through a windshield. "Home's worth fighting for, Daddy." The echo faded, leaving the bay heavy with silence. Bruno shut the folder. "3 big jobs, or we're done." Robbie tapped his phone. "That clip of Howard's already climbing. People asking for the shop's address." Bruno shook his head. "Likes don't pay leases." Howard set the mop back in the bucket. The motion was steady, deliberate, like a driver tightening gloves before a race. Across the street, the glass facade of Vance Auto Group caught the afternoon sun, sharp as a blade, Inside, a man watched from behind tinted glass. Howard felt it, though he couldn't see the eyes. Pressure, aimed straight at him. He turned back to the floor, muscles quiet, but coiled. He'd come in hungry, looking for work and a sandwich. Instead, he'd stepped onto a battleground, one where engines weren't the only thing that needed fixing. Bruno stood by the Mercedes S560, hood lifted, shadows cutting across his face. "Electronics dead," he said. "We've tried everything." Clara's eyes slid toward Howard, who was rinsing the mop. "Maybe let him earn that sandwich." Bruno hesitated, then nodded. "You fix it, lunch is yours." Howard set the bucket aside. No rush, no bravado, just a quiet steadiness. He stepped to the car, sleeves pushed up, the smell of oil thick in the air. The shop hushed. Even the radio faded behind the scrape of a socket somewhere in the back. Howard leaned in, tracing the wiring with calloused fingers. He paused, tilted his head, almost listening. A breath, a small adjustment, and he teased a thin copper line free from a pinch near the firewall. "Try it." Clara turned the key. The engine caught, smooth and low, like a deep breath after drowning. Reggie let out a whistle. "Man just healed a Benz." Bruno handed over a paper bag. "Hot and fresh." Howard accepted it with a nod, biting once, eyes still on the running motor. Robbie hovered, curiosity bright. "How'd you spot it?" Howard's glance was brief, steady. "Sometimes you don't spot. You feel." Clara studied him, something shifting behind her calm. By the fence outside, two older neighbors watched through the slats. One tapped the other's arm. "That brother's got golden hands," he whispered. "Reminds me of folks they never put on magazine covers." Bruno followed their gaze, then back to Howard, the man who'd walked in for a meal and just saved a piece of their history. Howard wiped his hands, precise, then set the rag down as if sealing a promise. Robbie grinned, nerves buzzing. "So, lesson number 1? Howard's voice was low, sure. "Keep your tools clean. Keep your mind cleaner." The car idled, steady as a heartbeat. For a fleeting second, the weight pressing on the shop eased, replaced by the sense that maybe, just maybe, they weren't out of moves yet. Robbie crouched by the toolbox, phone in hand, replaying the clip of Howard coaxing the Mercedes to life. The video caught the exact moment the engine purred, and the room froze. Howard standing calm, rag in hand, like he'd pulled a miracle out of steel. "Man, people gotta see this," Robbie muttered. He hit upload before Bruno could object. Within an hour, the comments rolled in. Fire emojis, disbelief, captions like, "Janitor? Nah, that's a wizard." Then came the retweet that detonated everything. A platinum rapper out of Atlanta posted the video with a single line, "Yo, this brother got the gift. Somebody find him. Hashtag golden hands." Phones pinged across the shop. Clara's brows shot up. "That's Dreon Flex," she said. 30 million followers. Reggie laughed, half in awe, half nervous. "We're famous. Or dead." Bruno rubbed his forehead, scanning the feed. "Fame don't pay rent," he said, but even he couldn't hide the flicker of hope behind his caution. Out on Jefferson Avenue, the barbershop hummed. Men in leather chairs argued over the footage, clippers buzzing between takes. "Look how he moves," one said, pointing at the screen. "Like he's been around racetracks, not mops." "That's old school skill," another replied. "Reminds me of cats my uncle ran with. Geniuses nobody put in the papers." A radio perched on the counter cut through the noise. "Local clip going national. Some say Golden Hands might be back after 15 years off the map." Howard's name wasn't mentioned, but the shop erupted anyway. Back at Premium Motors, Bruno scrolled through a flood of DMs, news stations, car blogs, even a church asking if Howard could speak at their men's breakfast. Robbie grinned like he'd won a lottery. Howard stayed at the back, wiping down tools, face unreadable. Only his eyes gave him away, that old shadow flickering beneath a steady surface. Across town, in an office wrapped in glass and steel, Silas Vance watched the same clip on a mounted screen. He leaned forward, fingers steepled, a cold smile spreading. "That ghost knows how to stay inconvenient," he said. An assistant hovered by the door. "Want me to flag legal?" Silas shook his head slowly. "Not yet. Clean up the chatter first. Kill the comments about golden hands." His gaze hardened. "And find out who uploaded that video. Quietly." The assistant nodded and slipped out, leaving Silas staring at Howard's frozen frame. Eyes down, hands steady over the Mercedes. Silas raised a crystal glass, took a measured sip. "Should have buried you deeper," he murmured. Outside Premium Motors, two elders from the fence ambled toward the door, still debating. "Boy got something special," one said. "Special can get a black man hurt if the wrong folks notice," the other replied. Inside, the shop's phones kept buzzing, the sound mingling with the steady thrum of the Mercedes engine. Howard set the last wrench in place, gaze sweeping the room, the crew glued to screens, the car gleaming under fluorescent light, the weight of old danger creeping closer. He didn't speak, but the way his jaw set said enough. This gift wasn't just about fixing engines anymore. It had stirred ghosts, and they were already moving. Night settled heavy over Premium Motors. The bay lights were off, leaving the shop striped with shadows. Only the storage room glowed faintly, door cracked just enough to spill a line of amber across the concrete. Inside, Howard sat on an overturned crate. A single bulb hummed above, catching the silver at his temples. In his hands, a worn photo. Edges curled from years of being folded and unfolded. A girl. 8 maybe. Bright smile framed by braids. Izzy. He traced the outline of her face with a thumb, slow and deliberate. For a moment the world shrank. No engines, no rent, no eyes watching through glass towers. Just her. From the far corner, a breath of air stirred the dust. The scent of bubblegum shampoo. Memory, or something closer. Then she was there, faint but sure. A small figure in a yellow hoodie, bare feet swinging above the floor. "Daddy," she said, voice like wind through reeds. "You can fix everything, right?" Howard didn't move. Izzy's smile wavered. "Even the stuff inside?" He closed his eyes, pain slipping through the cracks in his calm. "I'm trying, baby girl." Outside, a siren wailed, distant but sharp, like a reminder of a city still awake. Howard looked at the photo again, the one he'd kept hidden since the crash, a moment frozen before everything burned. He set it gently on a shelf beside an old socket wrench, the handle engraved with a tiny heart she'd scratched there years ago. Her voice came softer now, almost a whisper. "Don't let them steal your hands." He reached for the wrench, fingers tightening around the cool metal. Breath steadied. The ghost was not accusation, but anchor, the piece of him that refused to die. From beyond the door came muffled laughter, Bruno and Robbie locking up for the night. Community sounds, warm and solid. A contrast to the ache in this room. Howard slid the photo into the breast pocket of his janitor shirt. He stood, shoulders squaring against the weight that never fully left. The bulb flickered once, then steadied. Izzy's outline faded with it, but the echo of her words stayed, threading through the quiet like a wire through steel. Howard stepped back into the dark shop, gaze sweeping over the silent cars. He felt the old ache press close, loss, guilt, the ghosts Silas had left behind. But under it, something steadier hummed, the same pulse that had guided his hands on the Mercedes. He touched the pocket where the photo rested. "I'll fix what I can," he murmured, barely audible. Then he headed for the exit, every step measured, as if walking a line between past and the fight, waiting just outside. Midnight slicked the streets outside King's Premium Motors. A black SUV idled across the avenue, windows tinted darker than the sky. Inside, Silas Vance leaned back, cufflinks catching the dashboard glow. "You know what to do," he told the driver. "Keep it quiet. I want their supply chain bleeding by morning." Two men in dark hoodies slipped out, moving toward the side alley where the shop's parts shed sat locked behind rusted mesh. Inside the garage, a single light burned over the counter. Bruno hunched over invoices, jaw tight. The numbers didn't lie. Credits maxed, deliveries delayed, every order strangled before it could hit the floor. Clara leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. "Third supplier canceled this week," she said. "Same excuse, system glitch." Bruno rubbed his eyes. "Glitch my ass! Someone's freezing us out!" Out back, the hooded pair popped the latch on the parts shed. Shelves of spark plugs and sensors gleamed under their flashlights. They yanked open bins, scattering components, snapping a few in half before slipping small packets of metal shavings into oil drums, sabotage designed to ruin any future repair. One paused, hearing a faint scrape of broom bristles. Howard, finishing his last sweep, stepped onto the lot. He paused at the alley, eyes narrowing. The men melted into shadow, sliding through the fence gap toward the SUV. Howard's gaze lingered on the open padlock, then up at the retreating taillights. He didn't move fast, just studied the scene like he studied engines, noting angles, pressure points, what didn't belong. Back inside, Bruno shoved papers into a drawer. "We're already 2 months behind on lease. Silas Vance is circling this block like a shark." Clara shook her head. "He doesn't want the shop. He wants the land. Once we're out, he drops a showroom here and calls it revitalization." Reggie appeared from the bay, grease still on his hands. "Yo, boss, somebody's been in the shed. Locks hanging loose." Bruno stiffened, grabbed a flashlight, and headed out with Reggie and Clara. Howard followed, silent. The damage was subtle but clear. Broken seals, misplaced bolts, a faint trail of powdered metal on the floor. Bruno exhaled hard. "We're not dealing with random thieves. Somebody's setting us up to fail." Clara's eyes swept the lot, then the skyline where Silas's corporate tower glimmered faintly in the distance. "He's tightening the noose." Howard crouched near the spilled bolts, rolling one between his fingers. His face stayed calm, but a muscle ticked along his jaw. Bruno caught the look. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Howard didn't answer, but he set the bolt gently on a shelf, as if filing evidence in his own ledger. From somewhere down the block came laughter from a late-night barbershop, voices rising over a soul track, warm against the cold creeping around the shop. Howard straightened, scanning the shadows once more. Trouble wasn't coming. It was already here, crawling through the cracks of a place that barely had room to breathe. Morning sunlight slanted through the bay doors, catching the haze of dust over King's Premium Motors. Bruno leaned on the counter, a job form in hand. "Part-time, cash at first," he said. "Shop's thin on credit, but we need a steady hand. You in, Howard?" Howard studied the form. Plain paper, but it felt heavier than any trophy he'd ever lifted. He signed with a steady stroke. Reggie clapped once. "All right, Big H, now you're official." Robbie grinned, holding up a phone. "Can I get a shot for the page?" Howard shook his head lightly. "Less flash, more work." But a flicker of warmth crossed his face. By noon, the shop buzzed. A church deacon had limped in with a sputtering bus full of folding chairs. "Choir can't roll if this old girl don't start," he said, eyes hopeful. Howard ducked under the hood, Reggie on one side, Robbie on the other. "Watch close," he murmured. "Feel for what don't belong." His fingers skimmed wires, pausing just long enough to teach where a fuse could hide trouble. The engine coughed, then settled into a low hymn. The deacon raised both hands, laughing. "Praise the Lord and the man with the mop." Outside, word spread fast. A school van swung in next, brakes shot. 2 grandmothers who ran a soup kitchen followed, begging for help with their aging delivery truck. One by one, Howard guided Reggie and Robbie through repairs. Sleeves rolled, moves clean and sure, patience laced with quiet authority. In the corner, Clara stacked receipts, watching the rhythm build. Cars flowing, neighbors drifting in to watch. She caught Bruno's eye. "Feels different in here," she said. Bruno nodded, lips tight around a smile. "Feels alive." By late afternoon, the lot looked like a block party. Kids perched on bikes near the fence, cheering when a fixed ride rumbled back to life. Inside, Reggie wiped sweat from his brow. Man, I didn't know I could learn this fast. Howard adjusted a wrench in his hand, testing the weight before passing it over. Tools don't do the job, he said. Hands and head do. Robbie leaned on the fender, camera forgotten for once. You ever think about teaching full-time? Howard didn't answer right away. He glanced toward the far shelf where Izzy's photo lay tucked behind a stack of rags, then back to the boys. One step at a time. Through the open bay door, music floated from a nearby barbershop, old soul rolling smooth over voices debating the golden hands rumor. Some said the clip online was staged. Others swore they knew that stance anywhere. Howard caught a line from the song, something about finding a way home. He exhaled, long and steady, then turned back to the van, sleeves dark with grease. All right, he said, voice low but clear. Let's make sure this one stops as good as it goes. The three bent together over the engine, a quiet alliance forming, surrounded by the pulse of a neighborhood beginning to believe. A crimson Ferrari rolled to a stop outside King's Premium Motors, engine coughing like an old smoker. The car gleamed under the noon sun, a jewel limping on 3 cylinders. Marcelo King, suit sharp, shoes brighter than the hood, stepped out, frustration stamped across his face. Bruno, I've got an event in an hour. This car stalls once more. My investors walk. Bruno glanced toward Howard, who stood near the service bay wiping his hands. You good for this? Howard set the rag aside, eyes narrowing at the low, uneven hum leaking from the Ferrari. He nodded once. By the time Marcelo handed over the keys, phones were already out. Robbie angled for the best shot. Live, baby! Folks need to see Golden Hands do his thing. Bruno scowled but didn't stop him. Attention meant potential business. A group of neighbors drifted over, drawn by the flash of Italian red against cracked pavement. From the barbershop across the street, a faint soul groove spilled through the doorway. Bass warm against the midday heat. Howard slid behind the wheel, listening with his whole body as the engine stuttered. He popped the hood, motioning Reggie closer. Hold the light steady. Under the sun, Howard's hands worked quiet magic, loosening clamps, tracing a sensor wire, adjusting fuel flow. He barely spoke, just pointed, teaching through motion. Reggie's eyes followed every shift of the wrench, sweat shining on his brow. Marcelo paced near the fence, phone glued to his ear. Yes, I'm at the shop. Just get the board ready. I'll be there if this miracle man pulls it off. Inside the SUV parked up the block, Silas watched the live stream, jaw set. His reflection cut through the screen. Howard leaning over the Ferrari, sleeves rolled, calm as stone. Back in the bay, Howard reached for a slim screwdriver, made one precise turn, then straightened. Try it now, he said. Bruno hit the ignition. The engine caught, coughed once, then roared, smooth, confident, alive. A cheer rippled through the crowd outside. Someone shouted, "That's how we do on Jefferson!" Marcelo's mouth fell open. He slid into the driver's seat, revved twice, and the car answered with a silky growl. Whatever you're charging, double it, he said, eyes wide. Howard shook his head. Just pay what's fair. Robbie spun, catching the faces around him, kids on bikes, elders nodding, a pair of teens streaming to their friends. Even a mail carrier paused mid-route, grinning. The music from the barbershop swelled, horns bright like applause. Silas tightened his grip on the phone, whispering to no one. Too many eyes on him. Marcelo extended a crisp bill, still dazzled. Keep the change, brother. He backed the Ferrari out, tires humming pure satisfaction. As the crowd thinned, Bruno clapped Howard on the back. Shop needed that win. Howard said nothing, only looked at the street where Silas's SUV idled a heartbeat too long before sliding away. The hum of the Ferrari lingered in the air, mixing with soul music and the low murmur of a neighborhood beginning to rally behind a man who fixed more than engines. A muted TV glowed inside a cramped office stacked with manila folders and old coffee cups. Detective Maya Jones leaned back in her chair, braids pulled into a neat bun, eyes fixed on a paused live stream replay. On the screen, Howard bent over the Ferrari, sleeves dark with grease, that stillness in his face, a focus she hadn't seen in years. She hit play. The video rolled, showing him steady the idol with one twist, coaxing the engine back to life, while neighbors clapped along with a soul track drifting in from somewhere off camera. Maya's pen hovered over her notebook. She scribbled a single line. Howard Golden Hands. Alive. She opened a drawer, sliding out an old folder stamped closed. Inside were photographs from a wreck 15 years back. Charred steel, skid marks, a baby seat tossed across asphalt. A younger Howard stood in one picture, wrists cuffed, eyes hollow. Her jaw tightened. She remembered the night she'd been called to that crash. Everyone swore Howard had been drunk, reckless. But the evidence never sat right. A clean brake line sliced too neat, a witness statement buried under procedural errors. She'd tried to push the case higher, only to be told to let it go. Career advice, they called it. She looked again at the new video, at the way Howard's hands moved. Not the tremor of a man broken by guilt. The precision of someone still carrying a truth no one let him speak. Maya swiveled to her computer, pulling up records. Silas Vance's name popped more than once. Real estate deals, quiet lobbying, an old racing sponsorship tied to Howard's designs. She clicked deeper until a firewall blocked her path. Of course, she muttered. Her phone buzzed. A cousin down in Atlanta sent a link. Hashtag Golden Hands trending. Comments flooded the feed. Mechanics praising technique. Elders recalling a young racer who used to donate winnings to community schools. That brother had angels on his shoulders, one wrote. Maya's reflection flickered in the dark screen. She thought of her own uncle, a bus driver who'd lost work after a rigged insurance claim. Same playbook. Frame the vulnerable. Protect the powerful. She stood, pacing past the bulletin board where faded photos of missing kids and civil rights marches mixed with current cases. Her badge hung heavy at her hip. The door cracked open. Her partner, Ortiz, peeked in. "You still chasing ghosts, Jones?" "Not a ghost," she said, sliding the Ferrari clip toward him. "A witness we all ignored." He shrugged. "File's dead. Why stir it?" "Because somebody burned a man's life to the ground," she said, voice low but steady. "And they're still out there." Ortiz left without answering. Maya shut the door, leaned against it for a beat, then grabbed her coat. The precinct lights buzzed overhead, but she barely noticed. Howard wasn't just a mechanic clawing his way back. He was the key to a story someone had tried very hard to bury. And Maya Jones, once warned off that road, was ready to walk it anyway. This time with the whole community watching. Dawn pressed low over Jefferson Avenue, light the color of old steel. Inside King's Premium Motors, Howard swept the bay in slow arcs, broom whispering against oil-stained concrete. A crash split the morning, sharp, final. Shards of glass rained across the shop floor. Howard froze mid-stroke. Two masked men lunged from a black SUV, bats flashing. They smashed the front display, raked a line down the roll-up door, then sped off, tires biting asphalt. Bruno stumbled from the office, tie askew. His gaze caught on the broken window, then on the empty street beyond. His lips moved, no words forming. Reggie ducked behind a tool chest, wide-eyed. Robbie, phone in hand, filmed fragments of the fleeing vehicle before lowering it, stunned. Howard set the broom against the wall and crossed to the jagged opening. He scanned the sidewalk, the barbershop opposite, curtains shifting in upstairs windows. No alarm in his face, only a quiet tightening, like an engine bearing weight. The photo of Izzy lay face down near the service desk, glass cracked across her smile. Howard picked it up, thumb brushing the splinter. Her voice flickered in memory. "Daddy doesn't run." He straightened the frame on a shelf, then crouched to clear debris so no one would cut their boots. Bruno finally spoke, hoarse. "Credits frozen. Now this." He pressed both palms to his knees, breath ragged. Howard rose slowly. He didn't answer. The air around him carried its own reply. From across the street, McCarter leaned out the barbershop door, Sam Cooke humming on a dusty speaker. "Y'all all right?" Howard nodded once. Neighbors gathered, quiet, watching. Robbie's phone buzzed. A notification streaking across the cracked screen. "Protect golden hands rising." Howard swept the last of the glass into a dustpan, movements deliberate, steady. He turned to the crew. "Board it up," he said, voice low, carved from stone. Reggie grabbed plywood without a word. Bruno, still pale, steadied himself and joined him. Howard set the dustpan down, wiped grit from his palms, and looked back at the empty street where the SUV had disappeared. No sermon, no promise, just a weight in his eyes, one that said the storm had only started, and he'd stand in it anyway. Outside, the soul record kept spinning, a soft insistence that change could come if someone held the line. Howard closed the door against the chill, glass crunching faintly beneath his boots. The shop smelled of dust and defiance. Whatever force had sent that warning hadn't counted on a janitor with calloused hands and a promise carved deep. He would not run. Heat shimmered over Jefferson Avenue when a battered silver minivan rolled to a stop outside King's Premium Motors, smoke feathered from its hood. Howard was tightening bolts on a church bus when a woman's shout cut the air. "Somebody, please!" He turned. A young black couple spilled from the van, mother clutching a small boy, his skin slick with fever sweat. The father waved frantically. "Car died. Hospital's 20 minutes." Bruno jogged forward, froze at the sight of steam hissing from under the hood. Battery? Maybe the pump. Howard wiped his hands on a rag, eyes narrowing on the wavering engine light. He stepped past them, calm but fast, scanning for leaks, loose wires, anything. A small crowd gathered. Neighbors from the barbershop. A mail carrier pausing mid-route. Reggie leaning out from Bay 2. Phones angled up, catching every move. Howard popped the hood. Heat gusted out. His fingers traced the belts, then the ignition coil. He heard a whisper from somewhere deeper. Not in the shop, not in this moment. "Daddy, you can fix anything, right?" Izzy's voice, soft as hospital sheets. The memory of sitting by her bed, tiny fingers tangled in his calloused hand. He steadied his breath. "Water pump seized," he murmured, mostly to himself. "Engine's starving." Reggie slid a tool roll across the hood. Howard caught it without looking, cracked the pump housing with a single snap, hands moving as if the van had been waiting for them. The mother rocked the boy against her chest, whispering a prayer. The father wiped sweat from his brow, helpless. Howard twisted free the jammed impeller, jury-rigged a bypass with a short hose from a scrap bin, then flushed the line with bottled water Reggie grabbed from the break room. He sealed the fix with a clamp, tightened it, and signaled the father. "Try it." Ignition clicked, sputtered. Then the engine steadied into a low purr. Applause burst from the curb. The mother's shoulders sagged with relief. She kissed her son's damp forehead, tears streaking dust on her cheeks. Robbie's phone buzzed in his palm. "Yo," he said, eyes widening. "It's trending again." On screen, a local R&B singer had reposted the live stream. "Protect this man, he's saving babies out here." Bruno exhaled, half laugh, half groan. "Howard, you just turned a busted van into a lifeline." Howard only wiped the sweat from his brow. His gaze slid to Izzy's photo on the shop wall, the crack still mended with clear tape. "Get them moving," he said quietly. The father gripped his hand, rough palms meeting calloused ones. "You don't know what this means." Howard nodded once. "Drive safe." The minivan pulled away, engine smooth, carrying its small passenger toward help. Around them, neighbors kept filming, voices layered with pride. Howard stepped back into the bay, wiping tools clean, but his eyes stayed fixed on the street where the van disappeared. Steady, unreadable, holding both the storm and the promise inside him. Night leaned over Jefferson like a closed fist. Robbie waited at the bus stop by the shuttered laundromat, hoodie up, cracking the edge of his phone case with his thumb. A black SUV rolled in without headlights. Rear door opened to dark leather and colder air. Silas's voice floated out smooth as glass. "Your clips made him a saint. I'm offering you a future." An envelope slid across the seat, thick, rubber-banded. A second offer glowed on the headrest screen. A number wired on command. Another screen. Medical past due in his mother's name. Red bars like warning lights. Tiny adjustment, the voice continued. 2 minutes of your time. 48 hours later. The car hiccups and dies. Public, clean, no one gets hurt. Your shop takes the heat, the street forgets, the market remembers. You'll have options. Robbie stared at the envelope, at the debt, at the easy door out. The door thudded. The SUV drifted away like it had never been there. Target arrived at noon next day. A pearl-white Range Rover with a local radio host's decal still on the window from last night's charity broadcast. Cameras were always near this one. Perfect. Bruno signed the intake with a careful hand. Electrical gremlin. Quick turn, good money. Howard nodded once, slid the truck into Bay 1. Reggie fetched tools. Robbie hovered, pulse high, the envelope a weight in his backpack. Shop sounds sharpened to needles, the click of a ratchet, the thin whine of a test light. Howard's focus drew the room tight. He traced power, listened for the whisper under the noise, found it, stabilized the idle, smoothed the misfire. The rover idled content, tamed. Pick up at 5, Bruno called to the assistant on the phone. We'll have her right. 5 o'clock became a crowd. The host came live on her stream, smile wide, mic clipped. Shout out to black business doing it right, she told her followers, hand on the rover's fender. Barbershop men leaned outside the fence, kids on bikes, soul on the radio, a bass line like a heartbeat. Howard wiped the hood once, eyes on the small things, the click of a relay, the way the dash lights breathed. He turned to grab a rag. Robbie's palm moved like a magician's misdirection. Quick, practiced. 2 screws, a slip, a wafer thing no bigger than a postage stamp seated where a ground should never wear glitter. The envelope in his backpack exhaled. The rover pulled away under applause, turned the corner. 1 block, 2. A cough, a hollow shudder. Live stream still rolling when the engine collapsed in the intersection and the dashboard erupted Christmas red. The host's face seized in disbelief. Horns blared. Smoke feathered the hood. Comments knifed up the screen in real time. Premium Motors did what? They took my sister's money. Told y'all it was hype. Towing lights painted the shop face shame blue 20 minutes later. Paperwork hit faster than sirens. A lawyer's email landed like a gavel. Negligence, damages, intent. Bruno closed the office door and leaned hard against it. Breath shook. Eyes didn't. They're coming. The block hummed with talk. In the barbershop, voices split. We hold our own. We can't defend Sloppy. The Sam Cooke record stayed on the shelf. Howard rolled the rover's hood open again, calm as if the room weren't drowning. He traced the wound back to a single bright wrongness. The wafer gleamed like bait under a porch light. He didn't touch it. He looked at the screw heads. Too clean. At the scratch across paint, only a certain screwdriver left. The brand lived in his own tool chest. The chest Robbie loved. He closed the hood gently, like a casket. Outside the bay door, the SUV from last night idled at the far end of the block, just long enough to be felt, then gone. Howard found Robbie by the compressor, knuckles white around a wrench that didn't need holding. The boy's eyes wouldn't climb to meet his. A single word, soft as a cut. Why? Robbie swallowed hard. No excuses, only tremor. My mom. Bills. He knew. Howard's gaze didn't flinch. They didn't buy your hands. They bought your fear. Silence dragged like chain. Fear's refundable, Howard said. Bring it back. Robbie's breath hitched. He won't let go. He will if he thinks you're useless to him. Howard's voice turned iron. And you're about to be very useless. Bruno hovered at the office threshold, eyes asking questions he was not ready to voice. Howard gave the slightest shake. Not here. Then angled his body to shield the boy from the room's judgment. Out front, a courier shoved an envelope through the mail slot. Lawsuit. Official seal, heavy as iron. Reggie picked it up with 2 fingers like it was hot. In Maya's office across town, a notification lit. Lawsuit filed minutes after a public failure. She pinned it beside a printout of shell companies tied to Vance's acquisitions, lines converging like a snare. The timing stank of design. Back in the bay, Howard pressed the wrench into Robbie's shaking hand, gently, like placing a prayer. "You fix what you broke," he said. "With me. And when he calls, you let him hear silence." Robbie nodded once, tears burning, but held. He pulled the sabotaged wafer, hand steadying under Howard's shadow. The Range Rover hummed true again on the stand, no audience now, only the quiet dignity of a wrong undone. Outside, the street kept talking. Inside, the shop reset its jaw. Howard wiped his palms, eyes cutting past the cracked window toward the place where power hid in plain sight. He had his traitor. He also had his son for the day. He chose the latter. "I won't feed another boy to that machine," the voice in his chest vowed, Izzy's echo braided with his own. The fight had a new rule: protect the hands that would keep this place alive while he went hunting for the man who had stolen his. Late afternoon light spilled through stained glass panes, painting the empty church hall in deep reds and blues. On the far side, a choir rehearsed, soft gospel chords drifting like a steady heartbeat. Howard sat at a folding table near the back, sleeves rolled, a coffee untouched beside him. Robbie stood at the threshold, hands stuffed into the pouch of his hoodie, shoulders folded inward. Howard's eyes lifted, steady, but not sharp. A single chair waited opposite him. Robbie slid into it, elbows on knees, gaze focused on the scuffed floor. The music rose, voices layering until the walls seemed to breathe. Robbie's jaw trembled once, then words broke through, halting, scraped raw by guilt. He spoke of the SUV in the intersection, of the wafer slipped under a bolt, of the envelope that felt heavier than any debt. "I thought I was helping my mom," he managed, voice low. "Didn't see how much I was selling." Howard listened without blinking, hands folded, still as carved oak. When silence closed in, he leaned forward, arms braced on the table. "What you let inside that bay wasn't just a device," his tone measured, quiet enough to force the boy to meet his eyes. "It was a man's shadow. He's been feeding off people's fear a long time." Robbie's fingers twisted, restless. "I ruined everything. Bruno, the shop, you." Howard's palm cut the air. Not harsh, just final. "No, you cracked a line. That's fixable. What matters is whether you leave it leaking or patch it before the whole block floods." The choir slipped into an old hymn, voices ringing higher, a call and response that smelled of Sunday kitchens and ironed suits. Robbie drew in a long breath, letting the sound settle the panic trembling in his ribs. Howard pushed a small rag across the table, the kind used to polish chrome. "Make it right," he said, words heavy but warm. "Not with speeches, with your hands, with your choices." Robbie looked up for the first time, eyes wet but fierce. "He's gonna come after me when I don't answer." "That's when you call us," Howard answered, gaze solid as a steel beam. "This place, these people, we don't throw our own to wolves." A chord swelled behind them, the choir sliding into harmony so rich it seemed to raise the dust. Howard let the moment breathe, then spoke softer. "I had a little girl who believed I could fix anything. She was wrong about some things, but not about this. Broken isn't the end." The rag trembled in Robbie's hands. He pressed it to his face, then folded it carefully, like something sacred. "I don't deserve another shot." "You don't earn a second chance," Howard countered. "You work it, steady, until nobody remembers you were on the edge." Robbie nodded slowly, shoulders loosening under the rhythm of the choir. A refrain built, voices calling, "Hold on, keep the faith." The sound filled the hall, climbing the rafters, wrapping the 2 figures at the table. Howard rose first, extending a calloused hand. Robbie gripped it tight, the handshake holding weight beyond apology, an unspoken pact that the boy would not walk that dark road alone. As the choir's last note lingered, Howard glanced at the sun slanting through glass, catching motes of dust like small sparks. A vow settled behind his eyes. Silas's shadow would not swallow another sun from this neighborhood. Rain had rinsed the streets clean by dusk, leaving the asphalt slick, reflecting strings of neon from the corner barbershop. Inside King's Premium Motors, lights glowed warm against the damp night. Bruno stood near the lift, arms crossed tight. Invoices lay scattered on the hood of an unfinished sedan. The shop door creaked. Maya Jones stepped through first, trenchcoat damp at the hem. Behind her, customers from past rescues filed in. The church van driver, the mother from the hospital run, even the man with the Lexus, now in a sharp blazer. Reggie and Robbie exchanged startled glances as a tall figure ducked inside last, the rapper who'd boosted the viral clip, hoodie shadowing gold chains. He clapped Howard on the shoulder, voice low and steady. "Brother, you built something real here. Don't let a suit steal it." Howard nodded once, jaw set. Maya placed a folder on the workbench, pages marked with sticky notes. "Preliminary findings," she explained, tone crisp. "Vance's people have been choking supply lines, planting stories about shoddy work. Nothing solid enough for court, yet. But the trail's there." Bruno rubbed a hand over his face, weariness cut with a flicker of fight. "So we're not crazy." "No," Maya answered, eyes scanning the room. "He's scared. That means he's sloppy." Through the bay door came the hum of voices from across the street. The barbershop's owner, Pops Carter, led a group carrying folding chairs and a cash box. They set up beneath the awning, calling neighbors over. A hand-lettered sign read, "Keep the garage alive." Howard stepped outside for air and found Pops handing out envelopes. "Folks dropping what they can," Pops said, not asking permission. "This shop kept their buses running, got kids to choir practice, kept mothers safe on the night shift." He nodded toward the line stretching down the block. "We don't let places like this die." Inside, Reggie scrolled through his phone, screen alive with a live stream. Comments flooded in. Hearts, fist emojis, prayers. The rapper angled his camera toward Howard. "Tell him what you need," he urged. Howard's gaze swept the room. Maya steady over her files, Bruno tense but present, Robbie hovering at the edge like a man choosing sides. He didn't pitch or plead. "We keep working," he said, voice plain. "Cars fixed right, people treated right. That's it." The rapper gave a quick nod to the camera. "You heard the man. Support black hands that lift whole blocks." A cheer rippled from the doorway, spilling into the wet street. Gospel chords drifted faintly from a nearby window, mixing with laughter and clapping as neighbors pressed cash into Pops's ba. Howard lingered in the threshold, rain misting his shoulders. For the first time in weeks, the air felt lighter. Not because the storm had passed, but because a crowd had shown up to hold the roof steady. Behind him, the engine sat waiting, silent promises that tomorrow there would still be work, still a fight worth meeting with steady hands. A courier's black SUV rolled to a stop outside King's Premium Motors just after noon, chrome wheels slick from a recent rain. Reggie leaned from under a hood as the driver handed Maya a heavy envelope sealed with silver wax. She slid it open, eyes narrowing at the embossed invitation inside. Tuner Takedown, presented by Vance Performance Group. Bruno read over her shoulder, lips pressing into a hard line. Prize money big enough to clear every debt. His gaze flicked to Howard. Howard studied the paper, face unreadable. A map sketched across the back traced a midnight race course through the abandoned freight yards, Vance territory. Maya's voice was low, clipped. "It's bait. He wants you out in the open." Howard folded the invite once, twice, sliding it into his pocket. "Maybe," he said, tone even. "Or maybe it's our shot." The garage settled into a tense hush. Robbie looked from one face to another, the memory of his mistake still etched across his posture. Reggie wiped grease from his hands, eyes sparking with something between fear and fire. "We take it," he muttered. "Show the whole city what we're made of." Across the shop, Pops Carter stood in the doorway, a paper bag of catfish lunches under his arm. He set the bag down, scanning the invitation still clutched in Bruno's fist. "Son," Pops said, voice steady as gravel. "Folk been trying to write black hands out of stories since tools were forged. Sometimes the only way to stay in the book is make the ending yourself." Howard's gaze drifted to the shell of the car resting on the lift, a lean coupe stripped for speed. He moved closer, fingertips brushing the bare metal. "We'll need a body that speaks louder than Vance's logo," he murmured. By evening, the shop throbbed with purpose. Under the whine of Sanders and hiss of spray guns, a plan took shape. Twin fuel rails for backup injection, reinforced axle for rough terrain, and paint that carried history. Robbie unfurled a stencil of a raised fist. Reggie traced the words in tape. "By any means." Bruno masked off the hood, laying a green, red, and black stripe down its center. Maya placed a small Juneteenth flag on the dashboard, its fabric catching a gust from the compressor. The smell of enamel and warm steel filled the bay. Howard worked in silence, eyes on every detail. Torque specs, brake bias, the ghost of Izzy's laugh echoing in the rafters. When Bruno finally cut the compressor, quiet rolled in thick and reverent. The car gleamed midnight with bursts of color alive along its lines. A quote from Malcolm X scrolled across the doors, a tiny, "I can fix it," etched beneath the rear spoiler like a secret prayer. Maya studied the finished machine. "This isn't just a car anymore," she said softly. "It's testimony." Howard wiped a hand across the fender, leaving a clean streak in the gloss. "Then let it speak," he answered. Outside, night gathered over the block, the barbershop lights casting amber across puddles. Neighbors leaned in doorways, watching as the crew rolled the car toward the street, its engine idling low, steady, a promise wrapped in chrome and history. Howard slid behind the wheel, felt the hum settle beneath his palms, and met the eyes of every person who'd put their faith on the line. A nod passed between them, quiet and firm. Whatever waited at Vance's racetrack, they were bringing more than horsepower. They were bringing a neighborhood, a lineage, a heartbeat painted into steel. The garage lay quiet under a bruised sky. Everyone had gone home, leaving tools stacked like soldiers along the benches. Howard stayed, hands resting on the hood of the tuned coupe. Moonlight spilled across its new paint. Juneteenth flag on the dash, Malcolm X's words along the doors. Sleep pulled at him, heavy from days without rest. He stretched out on the worn sofa in the corner, still in his oil-stained coveralls. Dreams came fast. Izzy stood on the cracked asphalt of a sunlit track, braids swinging, smile wide. She held a coiled jumper cable in both hands, tapping one end against her palm. "When a circuit quits, Daddy, you don't panic. You make another path." Her voice was soft but sure, a child explaining truth to an adult. Wind ruffled her t-shirt, the same one from that last summer, printed with a bright yellow wrench. She pointed to the car beside her, the same coupe waiting in the garage, only here it shimmered like memory. She crouched by the firewall, fingers tracing a thin copper line hidden behind the harness. "Backup feed lives here. Don't forget." Howard reached for her, heart swelling with the old ache. The track dissolved into a blur of headlights and sirens, the crash that stole her. She looked back once, calm against the storm. "You can still fix things, Daddy. Even the dark." He woke with a start, breath catching. The garage was black except for a slice of moon through the high window. The dream clung to him, more instruction than vision. Crossing the floor, he popped the hood and studied the engine bay. There, tucked beneath the relay block, a narrow channel perfect for a secondary power lead. He could rig a hidden bypass in minutes, a lifeline if Vance tried to kill the car mid-race. Howard gathered wire, solder, heat shrink. His movements were deliberate, quiet, almost ritual. Each click of a connector, each twist of copper felt like a prayer for the daughter who believed in miracles inside her father's hands. When the last sleeve sealed, he stepped back. The coupe's engine gleamed, heart steady under the lights. From the doorway came a faint sound, Reggie, lingering after all. He'd curled up on a stool, half asleep, hoodie pulled tight. "Everything good?" he asked, voice thick with drowsy concern. Howard looked at him, at the kid who'd grown from a cocky helper into something like a son. "Good now," he answered, the weight in his tone steady as the car's frame. Outside, the neighborhood lay hushed, street lamps painting gold pools on the pavement. Somewhere down the block, a choir practiced for Sunday, voices rising warm and low. Howard closed the hood and let the music settle inside him. Tomorrow, Vance would try to shut him down. But tonight, armed with his daughter's whisper and a hidden line of power, Howard felt the race was already half won. Engines thundered against the night as the tuner takedown roared to life. A sea of headlights stretched across the city's industrial strip, music thumping from parked trucks. Banners snapped in the wind, Juneteenth colors stitched with local car club crests. Howard tightened his gloves and slid into the driver's seat. The coupe shimmered under the lights, its body inked with quotes, "By any means necessary." "We rise." Reggie buckled in beside him, jaw set. Bruno, Maya, and half the barbershop crew waved from the pit wall, gospel hum floating from someone's speaker. Silas leaned against a black supercar 2 lanes over, grin sharp as glass. A remote fob gleamed in his palm. Engines revved. A starter dropped the flag. Howard launched forward, tires biting asphalt. The first curve tore past. Warehouses, chain-link fences, flashes of faces cheering from rooftops. Reggie called out the gaps. "Left clear! Tight right!" The coupe answered every touch, a rhythm born from Howard's hands. They vaulted into second place, chasing Silas's machine through a corridor of streetlights. Halfway down the back straight, the car jerked. Dash lights strobed red, power bled away. Reggie's breath caught. "We're dying!" Howard steadied the wheel, eyes narrowing. He'd known this would come. Silas's trick. From the crowd, Silas raised the fob, smug in the glow of sabotage. Time bent. Izzy's laugh drifted through the roar, memory alive inside the cockpit. "When a circuit quits, Daddy, you make another path." Howard's fingers flew to the console. He killed the ignition, ripped open the panel beneath the dash, and yanked the jumper line he'd built the night before. Sparks flared against his wrist. He locked the makeshift lead to the spare terminal, pulse hammering in his ears. "Hold her straight," he told Reggie, voice calm as stone. The coupe coughed, then howled awake. Engine notes swelling like a choir hitting its peak. Crowds erupted, catching the moment on phones, gospel mixing with bass from nearby speakers. Someone shouted, "Golden hands!" Howard punched the throttle. The car lunged forward, slingshotting past 2 competitors. Ahead, Silas glanced in the mirror, disbelief flashing across his face. He jammed the fob again, but the bypass held. Turn after turn blurred. Brake, pivot, surge. Every move rode the edge of physics. The finish banner rose beyond the final curve, flanked by floodlights and a line of kids waving homemade signs. Silas made his last play, blocking the inside line. Howard stayed patient, inches from the rival's bumper. At the last heartbeat, he darted wide, clipping the outer curb. Tires screamed. The coupe skated, then gripped. They shot past Silas, engines singing, Juneteenth flag rippling across the hood. The crowd's roar drowned the city noise as Howard crossed the line a breath ahead. He coasted to a stop, heart still racing. Reggie slapped the dash, laughter spilling out with shaky relief. "Man, you just rewrote the rules!" Howard climbed out to an avalanche of applause. Maya pushed through the mob, badge glinting under neon. Behind her, gospel singers from the church had gathered, lifting a short refrain that floated above the din. Silas arrived moments later, face tight, security in tow. The fob was gone from his hand. He opened his mouth, but the crowd drowned him. Chants of "hands that fix everything" rolling like thunder. Howard stood steady beside the coupe, eyes scanning the people who'd stood up for him. Neighbors, rappers, shop kids, mothers holding babies. All of them cheering a janitor who'd outrun a billionaire's scheme. Somewhere inside, Izzy's voice lingered, warm as sunlight. "You fixed it, Daddy." He let a smile break, small but sure, then raised a fist high over the hood, a quiet salute to a daughter's faith and a community's fight. Floodlights bathed the finish line in silver as applause rolled like surf. The coupe idled nearby, paint gleaming, its hood still trembling from the sprint. Howard rested one hand on the roof, eyes scanning the crowd. Alert, even in victory. A dark SUV pushed through the barricade. Doors opened fast. Maya Jones stepped out first, trench coat snapping in the wind, a slim file in her grip. Behind her, 2 FBI agents fanned wide, badges catching the lights. Maya mounted the low platform, voice cutting through the noise. This race isn't the only thing ending tonight. Screens around the track flickered from highlight reels to a string of files, Shell Company charts, patent records, purchase orders stamped Vance Motor Group. A murmur rose, sharpening to outrage as images scrolled, a brake line diagram, emails referencing accident cleanup. Howard stayed still, gaze locked on Silas at the far edge. The billionaire stiffened, watching his empire unravel on monitors meant for speed stats. Maya raised a small recorder, its red light blinking. Robbie stepped forward from the pit wall, hood down, jaw set. He placed another drive into her palm. Audio spilled across the speakers. Silas's voice, cool and unmistakable. Drop the device. Make it fail. You'll get your money. The crowd shifted, anger thickening the air. Pops Carter moved closer, arms crossed over a jacket worn from decades of shop talk and Sunday sermons. Man tried to buy a child's fear, he muttered, voice carrying. Silas's security closed ranks, but the agent slid between, hands hovering near cuffs. Maya's eyes didn't leave the target. Industrial theft, witness intimidation, 15 years of obstruction around a crash you engineered. Silas's mask cracked. Words formed, swallowed by the sudden quiet. Only the engine of Howard's car and the steady tap of rain on banners remained. Howard stepped forward once, calm as stone. You wrecked my family to build yours. His tone steady, forged from loss and hours at a bench. Tonight ends that. An agent clasped steel around Silas's wrists. Flashbulbs popped from every angle. Some in the crowd cheered. Others stared, stunned by how quickly power could tilt. Robbie exhaled hard, shoulders lowering for the first time in days. Howard glanced at him, a nod small but full, a promise that the boy's worst moment no longer owned him. Maya handed the file to an agent. Chain of custody begins now. Her gaze swept the gathering. Jefferson Avenue doesn't bow to predators. Pop stepped up beside Howard, palm firm on his back. Told you, son. You stay in the book by writing the end yourself. Around them, gospel voices rose from the choir that had come to witness the race, weaving a refrain through the night, justice rolling down like water. Neighbors joined in, their sound folding over the roar of traffic and the last echoes of engines. Howard stood among them, shoulders squared, watching Silas led past the cameras. The fight that had started with a brick through glass and a stolen design had closed here, in front of a city, under lights bright enough to burn lies away. He rested both hands on the coupe, its hood warm beneath his palms. For the first time since Izzy's laughter filled a living room, the weight pressing against his chest began to lift. The floodlights softened over the track, turning steel and asphalt into a quiet stage. Silas's SUV was gone, agents with him. What remained was a hum of voices, people pressing closer, waiting. Howard stood beside the coupe, palms resting on its roof. The Juneteenth flag on the dash fluttered in a stray breeze. Malcolm X's words curved bold along the doors. Behind him, Reggie and Robbie lingered, shoulders squared again. Maya, Bruno, Pops, and half the block formed a half circle, faces lit by phones streaming live. Howard stepped onto a low crate near the hood, eyes sweeping the crowd. The noise thinned until only the distant bass of a car stereo and a faint gospel note from the choir floated through the air. This isn't just a win on blacktop, his voice carried, low and even, cutting through drizzle. We turned what somebody meant for a cage into a road. He glanced at Robbie, at the tremor finally gone from the boy's hands. We fixed more than a car tonight. We proved a set of hands can lift more than wrenches. They can lift people. A murmur of assent rippled forward. Howard opened the folded document Maya had pressed into his pocket earlier. Prize check, contract, sponsor letter. He held it up for all to see, then tore the envelope seal clean. "Every dollar here goes to the Golden Hands Foundation," he announced. "A place on Jefferson where young folk, second chancers, anybody written off gets trained to build and keep what's theirs. Engines, jobs, dignity, all under one roof." Applause cracked, sharp against the night. Phones shot higher. From near the fence, the rapper lifted his livestream mic toward Howard. "Y'all hear this?" he shouted to thousands watching online. "Protect our brother. Protect a shop that saves our babies and our buses." His words lit comments like fireworks. Pops Carter raised a weathered hand. "That's the legacy, son, not trophies. Doors you leave open for the next set of knuckles." Howard met the old man's gaze, something soft flickering behind his calm. "That's the point," he replied. The choir's leader, a tall woman in a bright scarf, began a refrain, slow and deep. "Keep your hands steady. Keep your heart wide." The crowd joined in, voices layering over the track's concrete, turning a parking lot into a sanctuary. Howard looked out across them. Barbers, teachers, kids on bikes, church drivers, shop hands, a detective who'd refused to quit, all of them bound by one night's fight. He placed the check on the car's hood, weightless compared to the moment. His fingers brushed the etched words beneath the spoiler. "I can fix it." For the first time in years, he let himself smile fully. Not triumph, but release. The gospel swelled. Lights from phones bathed him in a constellation of small suns. Howard raised his hand, palm open, a mechanic's salute, a promise to build and keep building. Somewhere beyond the glow, Jefferson Avenue waited for morning, ready to hold what they had claimed. A foundation, a future, and proof that even a janitor's hands could bend steel and fate toward something whole. Morning lit the new building in a soft gold. Fresh paint, clean glass, a bay door rolled high to show rows of workbenches and neatly racked tools. Kids in navy coveralls lined the curb, palms slick with nerves and pride. A ribbon in red, black, and green stretched across the entrance. Pops Carter stood with the choir, their hum low and warm. Bruno checked the torque on a ceremonial wrench. Reggie and Robbie held the ribbon taut. Maya watched from the edge, hands in her pockets, a small smile breaking her usual steel. The rapper live-streamed to a sea of hearts. Howard stepped forward in a crisp shop jacket. On the brick wall beside the door, a bronze plaque waited under a velvet cloth. He pulled the cover free. "Where black hands transform futures." In memory of Izzy Carter, silence rose, the kind that feels like breath before prayer. A mother in the crowd pressed a kiss to her son's temple. Somewhere a church bell tolled once and stopped. Howard set the ceremonial wrench across the ribbon. Snip. The crowd exhaled into applause, drums joining the choir as doors swung wide. Inside, a classroom with engines cut open like textbooks, a counseling room with a couch and sunlight, a small memorial wall with a single photo. Izzy, braids flying, grin unstoppable. He stood before the picture, thumb lifting a smudge from the frame. His voice barely rose above the choir's swell. "We fixed it, baby." Pops rested a hand on his shoulder, brief and firm. The choir leader lifted a line. "Keep your hands steady. Keep your heart wide." And the room answered, voices threading through steel and light. Howard turned to the crowd. No speech stacked with polish, just the weight of a promise. "Doors stay open. Skills stay here. If you were written off, come write your next page." The mother from the minivan waved from the back. Her boy, bright-eyed now, flashed a thumbs up. Two church drivers nodded toward the new lift. Teens swarmed the benches, fingers tracing tools they'd soon command. Phones rose. The rapper's lens caught the plaque, then Howard's hands, scarred, steady, ready. Comments poured in like a tide. "Protect him. Protect this." The barbershop crew started a slow clap that rolled into cheers and didn't stop. Sunlight slid across the bronze, across the Juneteenth flag in the lobby, across faces that had carried each other through a long night into this morning. No matter how far you fall, you can rebuild and lift a whole community. Howard let the applause settle, eyes sweeping the room one last time. The plaque gleamed in the morning light, steady as a heartbeat. "Thank you for standing with us," his voice carried, warm, unhurried. "Every pair of hands here, fixing cars, lifting neighbors, that's the story we're writing." He glanced toward the kids already crowding the benches, then back to the faces at the door. "Keep building with us." The camera phone caught his nod and the small smile breaking through. If this story moved you, share it, protect spaces like this, and stay close for the next journey. There are more hands to steady, more futures to shape, and together, we'll keep the road open.